Hey everyone, welcome to the KE Report and another daily editorial on Friday, August 15th. Now chatting more technical trading with TG Watkins. TG is the director of stocks at Simpler Trading, also editor of the Profit Pilot website. Now, TG, we always talk to you about kind of random sectors sometimes. You're looking for opportunities in really whatever stocks, whatever sectors you see. And right now, there is still quite a few things going up. We keep hearing about how large tech is leading these markets, but there are pockets of bright spots all over. So, what's catching your eye from a technical, more shorter term trading sense? Where are the best opportunities?
Yeah, certainly. Well, let's step back a little bit because I always like to give context of what's happening to the market. We know that July is typically a pretty bullish month in seasonality, and it is. But then we also know that August tends to be seasonally weak because usually, and this goes with stocks, you have a really big up move. Well, you're probably going to get a pullback or you're going to get some digestion after that big move. And that's basically what happens. But when it's a market thing, we get a really big move in July. Well, August tends to be a little bit more subdued to absorb that. We might be bucking the trend a little bit this year because just this market is so darn strong for so many reasons and so much keeps coming out. I mean, look, we just had a hot PPI and the market shrugged it off, didn't care. So we're going to have to see what that's going to actually do for kind of inflation trickling into CPI and generally like that. I'm just going to put it out there. It seems as though the market is not too concerned with a little bit of inflation because I think that it's so focused on growth and everything else that's going to happen, and I guess potentially interest rates getting cut, that they're just like, look, we understand there's going to be some inflation. We know that there are tariffs, which is going to cause either some inflation or just producers to have to raise prices. It's yet to be seen how much of that is going to get passed on to the consumer because the CPI was still cool, came in below, expectations. And they're just looking at pro growth. And I think that they're just like, we got bigger fish to fry. We're not worried about a little bit of inflation on that situation. Leading up to that, since I was expecting August to be a seasonally weak month, and I knew we had a big month in July, we started noticing kind of about halfway through July that more and more stocks were starting to pull back. And I could see this, we were taking profits on things. We were in fewer stuff. We were entering fewer new trades and more actually having to just manage our trades. And so I thought, okay, well, that means eventually this is going to work its way up the food chain and eventually the index is going to pull back. And we had FOMC, Jerome Powell came out, said something, he was pretty hawkish. The market went down quite a bit, and that was the very end of July. And then we had, which because that was kind of confirming my narrative to the downside. And then we had Meta and Microsoft with their earnings, and they shot straight up. And that actually gapped the market up quite a bit on that Thursday at the end of July. And then I'm thinking, all right, am I wrong about this? Everything tells me that the market should be pulling back and coming down a little bit. And then that was kind of like the blow off top with those mega caps coming out with those earnings. And then the market sold off on Thursday, and then we got that giant gap down on Friday, which was August 1st. We did capitalize on that downside a little bit. And then from there, I guess that was the flush out. The market actually just kept stair stepping higher after that. A couple blips and things along the way, but that was it. I was expecting a little bit more follow through to the downside, so that's kind of the only thing that threw me off. And actually, if you look at the RSP versus the S&P, the SPY, it's the equal weight versus the cap weight. And you can see the stark difference in the few days after August 1st. And that's kind of what I was expecting was a little bit more heaviness from the market to retest the low area before going higher. So basically, that's what I've seen. We've seen now breadth recover. We went from 80% of stocks over their moving averages to 40% of stocks. So we definitely worked off the overbought condition. I do think that the seasonal weakness happened. And now, if the market says that's good enough and wants to start going higher, then so be it. I'm not going to argue with it, and that's what we're looking for. So yeah, kind of game back on if we can continue going in this direction. There also seems to be plenty of money in the market rotating around. So if there are certain sectors that are getting a little too overbought, just be prepared, they might pull back, but it does seem like money rotates into other sectors that have opportunities. So there's always kind of something going on right now.
Well, there's a lot going on right now, and to your point, it's kind of been like a Teflon market. Nothing has seemed to stick, whether it's the jobs data, was a fleeting moment, inflation, even a hot war in another Middle Eastern country didn't seem to stall the markets that long. So the market has been in a pretty bulled up situation, but you bring up the breadth, and we had a couple other people, TG, come on the show and highlight that the breadth was narrowing a couple weeks ago, to your point. But they've also talked about how the small caps have lagged and that really everybody was more piled into the mega cap tech stocks, kind of like a safe haven, but also just as a momentum play. But I know that you always are able to find pockets of small caps that are in a growth mode. So we keep hearing that there's nothing going on with the IWM and that it's a laggard and stay out of it, but you continually find opportunity in some of these individual stocks. So anything you want to highlight?
Yeah, and to that point, I would agree that coming into, well, at least the bulk of July towards the end of July, the mega caps were the safe haven. They kept going up. You could look at stuff like the Nasdaq, they were still up. And you could look at FNGU, which is the leverage ETF of the FANG stocks, it was still up or actually trending sideways, while I was seeing a majority of stocks actually starting to come down and pull back. All very true, because that is the flight to safety. But ever since August 1st, when we got that flush out, you can now see, and actually once CPI came out, you can see IWM straight up. It now just made a new high from its previous high. You could see the RSP right back up. You could see everything now resurged back to the upside once the CPI came out. Because I think what happened was CPI came out cool. Institutions were probably overly short on the IWM. And when there's no inflation to worry about right now, then they're like, oh crap, we have to get out. And that's why you see IWM back on its game. You can even look at ARKK. That thing took like one dip and now it's back up again. So yeah, I think that I think money can now feel comfortable about getting back into the small caps because I think it's refreshed. As far as opportunities, I generally like things that are related to crypto. I know today kind of seems a little bit soft, but GLXY is a name that we're in. We're looking at BMNR, the Tom Lee account for Ethereum. I'm sure a lot of people know about that. That thing's jumped up. We're like plus 60% on that thing already. I'd like to find places to add to it. I feel like coin is eventually going to be a spot. Oh, you want to see some crazy things? How about cannabis? I totally missed this one, but apparently the Trump administration has been talking about legalizing or decriminalizing. I don't really know the news, but there's been enough conversation there that most of cannabis has really started popping up. It's a little too high to pick any up right this moment, but it's basically on the radar now if anybody's interested in looking at cannabis. Some other notable names, Figma came out. It's still too new for me to do anything, but Bull, Bull, that thing is looking pretty interesting. I think that there's an opportunity there. We're actually in it. And talk about mega caps that's been lagging a little bit. Tesla. I think Tesla finally broke out of a pennant, and I think Tesla right now is actually pulling back into potential support. So I would certainly keep an eye on that one. And let's see. Oh, the drone stocks. The drone stocks right now are a little bit heavy. Something like UMAC or RCAT. I'm in them. I'm just kind of waiting for them to continue their flag on higher time frames, and I don't see any reason why these drone stocks won't be much higher sometime in the future.
TJ, I want a little bit more color why you're so positive on some of these crypto stocks as well. Bitcoin made that breakout, retreated a little bit back from that breakout, dropped about $5,000 in one day, is starting to climb back higher. But why are you favoring crypto so much right now?
Well, I'm sorry. Did you guys see Ethereum for the last few weeks?
Yeah, fair. Hey, there's been a lot of gains happening.
Yeah, yeah. If that doesn't tell you, it's kind of like Bitcoin 2.0. Ethereum is finally having its day. And for whatever reason, if it's that corporations and companies and all this stuff are starting to figure out the use case for Ethereum, I don't know. It's not really my area of expertise, but I know charts, and there was a really solid entry off of the daily 50 a few weeks ago, and Ethereum has since been straight up. In fact, I told my parents to buy ETHU, which is the leverage ETF of Ethereum, and I think I last checked they were up 190% in a matter of weeks on that thing. So yeah, that's doing well. BMNR is doing great. So yeah, right now, sure, Bitcoin's a little bit soft. Maybe Ethereum is kind of stealing some of the spotlight from Bitcoin. But what else can you say? Some of the Bitcoin miners are doing well. Irene, Hut, Wolf, WULF just had some news that they're working out a deal with Google and they just shot up massively. There's still a lot of sectors that are strong in the cryptos. Like, don't count them out.
I was going to ask you about the crypto miners because that's another way to play the sector and some of the fintech stocks. But there are some companies that are really more Bitcoin focused, and then there are some crypto miners that are mining a lot of different altcoins as well. And so they may have multiple different cryptos in their, when they're processing and when they're doing all the proof of work to generate new cryptos. Do you have a preference there if they're Bitcoin focused or if they're kind of a multi-coin company? And any thoughts on the crypto repositories where there's companies that are just adding Bitcoin to their balance sheets?
Yeah, so I don't know everything there is about each particular Bitcoin miner. I know most of the miners, and I will say if you look at them, they're kind of all over the place. Some of them are not doing great, some of them are holding up, and then some of them are awesome. And it seems to me from what I've learned is that stuff like Irene, Wolf, Hut, they are doing well because they have an energy component to them. Either they have super cheap energy or they're actually producing energy, and that's what's also adding or contributing to their stock performance. The rest of them that seem to be pure Bitcoin miner plays are not quite performing right now. And so yeah, I don't know what to say about those. Maybe sometime in the future they'll probably do well, but Bitcoin's kind of been resting for a while, and so that's why I would say, well, if they have Ethereum exposure, then they should do pretty well. As far as either the treasury or the holding companies, you think about like MSTR 2.0, that's where SBET, SBET, or I think it was GAME. I think those are the tickers. SBET had some pretty big moves. I think it's resting right now. I'm in it, and I think it'll eventually go up, but I'm kind of waiting for that opportunity. And then yeah, BMNR, that had a huge move. Kathy Woods has been piling into it. Peter Thiel has 10% in it. These things are all going to be stuff for the future. And I know your traders, the people who listen to you, are longer term. I would generally say these are all longer term trends.
There's just so much happening in the crypto space. I love reading all the stories about what's going on there and some of these just huge market moves. Switching a little bit of focus though, anything on the earnings front that has caught your eye, good or bad?
Oh, it's been all over the place. I think the one thing that people keep noticing is that the semiconductors keep going down on earnings. I don't know if that's because all the good news has already been baked into it, and so it's kind of a buy the rumor, sell the news situation, and maybe it'll be fine into the future. But that is something notable. I think people are saying, "Oh, the market's down today because I don't know, was it one of the semiconductors had earnings today and it was down. I was like, yeah, but look at the last few weeks. They've all been down and then they kind of recover. So yeah, I don't really have too much. Earnings is just always a gamble. I know that there are things that have gone up, like SoundHound went up. Gosh, off the top of my head, I can't really think about it because if they go up too much and I can't do anything about it, I gotta wait till they come back down. And so I just tend to try to avoid earnings as much as possible.
Well, TG, you brought up the resurgence of the cannabis stocks, and I saw some articles out this week talking about Tilray brands, TLRY, and it had a big move. If you look at it from just June, it's gone up 4x or almost 5x. If you look at it just in the last couple of weeks, it doubled. And so I guess that's symptomatic of a lot of the companies that have U.S. exposure trying to tap into the news, the potential legalization from the Trump administration. Are you playing any of those for quick position trades or swing trades, or how are you looking at the space? Is it just hot air?
I don't think it's hot air. It does seem to be that something legitimate is starting to show up, especially through the administration. Cannabis has been pretty much dead money ever since after the 2020 bubble. And so I've been a little bit slow to get into it. And we knew that these things were not going to turn around until they had some sort of government, confirmation or thumbs up, because I mean they're just being stifled otherwise. Like how can you do a business when it's still kind of partially illegal, even though they're still thriving? But I think from a stock market perspective, big money can't get into it until it's legal. We started to notice some rumblings here basically at the beginning of July, because if you look at Tilray, if you look at MJ, you could see that these things were starting to move. I was like, interesting. Something must be going on. And I did start to talk about it and tell my subscribers about it. So I know some of them took action on stuff like MSOS, but then clearly something came out, gosh, even just 5 days ago on the 11th of August, because that's when Tilray shot up on huge volume. And so, yeah, dare I say that game is on for cannabis. These things are looking good. Lots of volumes coming into them. And across the board, they are all doing well and big, big moves. So I don't think right now is the great time to get in. The big pop has already happened. So now wait for them to pull back or to flag and find the next opportunity. But yeah, they look good.
So what's a reasonable pullback in your eyes then? Because I think we're all in that boat where we see stocks pop and we think, boy, we missed it. And then from a trading perspective, yes, we want to pull back to re-enter, but what is a reasonable pullback? How do you tell that now would be the time to get back in once something does at least fade a little bit from that spike high?
Generally, just top of the head kind of say something, generally price would pull back to the daily 21 or the daily 50. Those are the two support areas that I would start to look for. Just simple could be.
Well, TG, you did bring up the move in Tesla, and since it's such a big stock and it's one of the Mag 7, and it's so hotly debated because of Elon Musk being involved, but also there was news out recently about robo-taxis and the breakthrough there. And it's even hard to know what Tesla even is as a company because they have battery components and solar components and car components and AI components. But when you look at it with your technical hat on, what do you see on the Tesla chart?
I see that Tesla has had the kitchen sink thrown at them and they still didn't go down. I mean, you look at that. Elon started talking politics, stock went down. Okay, it recovered. They had bad sales, stock went down. Okay, it recovered. I mean, it's basically bulletproof, is how I see it over the last few months. And right now, I'm looking at the weekly chart on Tesla. We've got the weekly 8 over the weekly 21, and we have price flagging into an uptrending weekly 50. It's basically sideways. And if you look at the daily chart, you can draw a pennant. And I say that the price broke out from the pennant 5 or 6 days ago when price broke out from 320. You know, it didn't go down. I mean, if these things were going to be like materially bad and negative for Tesla, Tesla would be below $300 right now, and it's not. So, and it's in fact it's up. I think this is game on. I mean, I'm in it from 320, and I'm looking to add more.
All right, TG, man, you've given us a lot of names. Thank you very much for all these insights and some of the stocks you're playing, some of the other ones you're watching. Still sounds like a lot of opportunities. That's why I love chatting with you because you always present us with a lot of different names for traders, especially
Yeah,
short-term
and
traders.
Corey, just kind of on that note, if people are still listening out there and they hear me talk about these things with all these names, I actually just did a class about a week and a half ago, and it's about how to pick great stocks. And I actually show monthly, weekly, daily charts, stuff, show you like, hey, what's not good versus what is good, how to find these things and the characteristics. So if you guys come over to simplertrading.com/Moxie and you sign up, that's hey, we've already had the recorded class, so you can just sign up, you can get the class and you can check it out. And that's how you guys can learn more about me and what I do and actually figure out what's going on with this market. So I just want to put that little plug in there.
Absolutely. Thank you, TG, and I will provide a link to the Simpler Trading website. Again, TG Watkins, Director of Stocks at Simpler Trading and editor of the Profit Pilot website. Always great chatting with you, TG. Thanks for your time on this Friday.